Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. How are you doing? You good? My name is Tim Harris. I'm the pastor at Woodburn Baptist Church. It's a church, medium-sized church in South Central Kentucky, a medium-sized state. And we are doing this every single day, 10 o'clock for about 10 minutes, give or take a minute. We go verse by verse through the Word of God, and we've been reading together for several years. We are probably getting pretty close. You'd be surprised how much progress you make verse by verse, day by day. But we are now finishing up the book of Jeremiah. We'll finish up here on Friday. Jeremiah, we'll go into something new, something else. Jeremiah is a long book, but it's rewarding. And I think you and I have both benefited from the work of trudging through Jeremiah. Actually, I love it. Chapter 50 is long. It is long, and it's not done. It goes right into chapter 51. We are in this final oracle against the nations, and this one, we say the biggest and baddest for last. This is the oracle against Babylon. Babylon, of course, is the nation that was from the beginning of the book of Jeremiah, that ominous nation from the north who would be coming in to bring punishment, God's punishment against Israel, against Judah. For a while in Jeremiah, we don't even know who the army from the north is. I'm not sure Jeremiah knew at the time. He was just revealing the truth, the future as God revealed it to him. But ultimately, Jeremiah begins to name Babylon. Ultimately, we know that it's Babylon. And then it happens just as God said, just as Jeremiah prophesied. Babylon has come. Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar has plundered. The people are in exile. But God's not done with Babylon. Now, God used Babylon. But the fact that God used Babylon to accomplish his purposes does not mean that God's going to excuse their evil, their wickedness, their sin. They weren't doing their work to bring God glory. They were doing their work for their own imperial designs. They were doing their work because they are oppressors. They were a very, very wicked kingdom. Again, God accomplished his purpose of bringing justice, punishment against his people, but that doesn't mean that he will turn his back on his people, and it doesn't mean that he will not also judge Babylon. He judges all the nations. And chapter 50 is, again, long, and it goes on into chapter 51. Long foretelling of the defeat, the way Babylon's going to be brought down. It happened, of course, in pretty short order. It happens 539, is that right? 539 was when Cyrus of Persia, or when Persia first comes down from the north and flattens Babylon. It's an archaeological ruin today, probably in what is now, modern day Iraq. But Babylon has fallen. Babylon is gone. And that's the prophecy that we're given in chapter 50. The radical and shocking nature of what you read in chapter 50 is hard for us to grasp, because we know Babylon's gone, but in the day, understand, Babylon ain't never going to read this. Jeremiah's never going to preach this in Babylon. This is a message for God's people, but it's a message of what God is going to do, what God is doing. And again, it's amazing. In the ancient world, you didn't have news, you had breaking news. You didn't have news from around the world. You wouldn't necessarily know that Persia's on the rise. You just wouldn't know until they're at your doorstep. And Babylon seems to be an undefeatable nation, an unstoppable nation. It was a great nation. There's no question. And today, the archaeology, the artifacts, the glory of what was Babylon is still sort of breathtaking. In its day, you couldn't have imagined what Jeremiah is telling you here. You don't have to imagine it. Jeremiah practically puts you there. I guess you call it like a vision event. The rhetorical feature here in chapter 50 and 51 is that Jeremiah sometimes sounds like an on the scene reporter. Shout war cries against her from every side. Look, she surrenders. Her walls have fallen. It's like he's there in real time, watching it and telling you as it happens. And in the spirit, he is. But it's almost like you get to watch the news report before it even happens. You know what I'm saying? It's portions of this oracle are told as if we're in the moment watching the city itself be destroyed. It's just amazing. Look how the mighty have fallen. I mean, that's sort of the refrain in chapter 50. Babylon has fallen. It says a lot about the danger of pride. It says a lot about the just incredible transitory nature of everything in this life, everything in this world. One day you are the advancing army from the north about to take over Judah, and the next day you are a nation about to be, defeated by an army from the north. I mean, what goes around comes around. And Babylon is about to get a really good taste of the medicine they've been dishing out for everybody else. The danger of pride. Marduk and Bel, their gods, are false gods, and they're about to come face to face with the one true God, and they're about to be smashed to bits. I mean, this is the prophecy. This is Jeremiah chapter 50. The danger of pride. We don't always think about how what goes around comes around, but and it's not that is exactly. It's not the gospel. The gospel is a word of grace that we don't get what we deserve. But understand, if you don't surrender to Christ, if you don't appeal to God's mercy and receive His grace, then what goes around comes around. You will be judged according to your works. Salvation is by grace, but judgment's by works. And so Babylon's about to get exactly what's coming to them. I like the sort of reverse golden rule you find in verse 15 that says, do to her as she has done to others. I mean, that's verse 15. Do unto her as she has done to others. It's the reverse golden rule, and it's how God's judgment's about to come. Like I said, one day Babylon is the nation from the north, stomping through the world, taking over the map. The next day they are getting stomped on by another army from the north. One day you are the young kid making fun of the old guy on Scottsville Road, driving down the road with his turn signal on, and the next day you're the old guy driving down Scottsville Road with your turn signal on. You know what I mean? One day, you're the young girl at church laughing at the old lady, with her slip showing, and the next day you're the old lady with her slip showing. I mean, that's just how it works. What goes around comes around, and that is the message of Jeremiah chapter 50. Babylon is about to get a really good dose of what she's been dishing out. It is the danger of pride, but also I think Jeremiah chapter 50, one of the beautiful parts of this oracle is the way it keeps coming back around to Israel and Judah and God's people, and how they're not forgotten, and how this reversal, Babylon's on top, Babylon's about to be on the bottom, God's people are in exile, they're about to come back home. Everything's about to be reversed. And again, in life, when you look out the window and see things as they are, you can't imagine that they get turned upside down. In our nation right now, where evil seems to win and good people seem to be disappearing, we can't imagine a God could bring a revival. That's the amazing power of God and the amazing inability of you and me to see anything of what God sees. It's all about to turn around. The tender way in which Jeremiah chapter 50 speaks of God's people once more as the flock of God. My people have been lost sheep because their shepherds led them astray. Again, one more time, man, we got to stick it to the shepherds that fail God's people. Jeremiah wanted pastors. God wanted pastors for his people, kings and priests and prophets and leaders who would tell the truth and show the way, but they didn't. And now God's people are lost. They're turned loose on the mountains. They don't even remember how to come back home. Don't even remember how to come back home. I love in verse 7 when it says that they've sinned against the Lord, their true place of rest. The Hebrew there is their true pasture. Their true pasture. He leads me into green pastures. But at the same time, in Jeremiah chapter 50, he is the green pasture. It's in the Lord that we find our peace, our rest, our sustenance, our nourishment, our refreshment. All of these things are found in him. He's our true pasture, and he is our true shepherd. I just love all of that. And again, throughout Jeremiah chapter 50, that refrain keeps coming back, that the Lord is a shepherd who will bring his people home. It's just a picture of God's mercy, and we all need a whole lot of that. I love verse 20 when it says that, the Hebrew says, in those days, a search will be made for Israel's guilt, and none will be found. A search will be made for Israel's guilt. It's like they've been punished, and God has forgiven, and now it's over, and it won't be coming back. You ever had to apologize to somebody because you failed them or sinned against them, and they say they forgive you, but then they remind you of it every day of the rest of your life. Well, that's not forgiveness. That's not how forgiveness works. And we talk about forgive and forget. It's not that it's forgotten. It's not that God's absent-minded and just can't remember what you did prom senior year. He's not absent-minded like that. It's just when it says that God forgets, the promise is he will never bring it up again. It will never come back to you again. A search was made for Israel's guilt, but none was found. That's the depths of God's mercy, and that's the only reason I got salvation. It's just the mercy of the Lord. But at the same time, make no mistake, there's justice. There is justice. Babylon is going to get exactly what is coming to them. They too would have had opportunities to turn to the Lord. They too would have heard. That's part of what we miss because the Old Testament really tells mostly the story from Israel's perspective. But God works in all these nations, and there's been word and warning given to all these nations. It's not just God comes back now and punishes people that have never heard of him. The whole world turns away from him. God seeks throughout the world to find anybody whose heart will turn toward him. And there's none righteous, no, not one. Let me go back one more time, go back to chapter 50, verse 5, where it says, they'll ask the way to Jerusalem, and their faces turn toward it. I love that. It's a picture of this renewal of spiritual desire and spiritual hunger that leads them back to the Lord. They'll ask the way back to Jerusalem. How do I get back home? And then they will turn their faces toward it. They'll start back toward home again. The New Living Translation says woodenly, but the Hebrew is beautiful. Their faces turn toward it. I love that. God's people are coming back home. Pick up tomorrow with chapter 51. You thought chapter 50 was long. Chapter 51 is like 64 verses, I think. So you're going to do a little bit of reading. I am too. We'll read chapter 51 and we'll come back tomorrow and then we'll be done on Friday, all right? So tomorrow, 10 o'clock, meet me here, Jeremiah chapter 51, to do it together. I love you guys so much. Have a great Wednesday. It's church day for me. We have midweek service tonight, prayer meeting tonight. I love all of that. I love everything that has to do with me getting to be with my church family. And so here in about 8 hours or so, we'll be together. I can't wait. Love you guys so